When Shen Lang was 18 years of age, I rescued his life. He had always been meek and compliant and requited my life-saving benevolence with his own person. Until Fu Jishu emerged, he beheld the countenance that resembled his own. He regarded me and inquired piteously, "Sister, do you cherish me or do you cherish my visage?" When I encountered Shen Lang, he was reclining on the hospital bed, drenched in blood. The motorcycle collided with a large lorry. He was grievously injured. If he does not undergo surgery, his life will be imperiled. However, the patient asseverated that he is an orphan. He lacks a family. I advanced slowly and beheld that he was clutching a guanine pendant tenaciously in his hand. Men are paired with guanine, and women with Buddha. I sneered and regarded him feebly. "Do you still place your faith in it now?" I stooped with a smile in my eyes and whispered in his ear, "Young lad, it is more efficacious to supplicate me than to beseech the divine." He regarded me, his eyes like a wounded little beast that had been retrieved. During that operation, I affixed my signature as Shen Lang's paramour. When the doctor inquired if he concurred, he regarded me for an extended period, ultimately relinquished the pendant and nodded. I defrayed all his medical expenses and engaged the most proficient nurse to attend to him. On the 10th day subsequent to the operation, the nurse telephoned, "Ms. Yen, he is clamoring to behold you and refuses to ingest the medicine." I knitted my brows and sighed. Half an hour. When I beheld Shen Lang again, he had gauze swathed around his pate, and his countenance was nearly healed, save for some contusions. "Your name?" I regarded him with my hands clasped across my bosom. "Shen Lang." I laughed. "Have your progenitors perused William Weischer? The male lead is denominated Shen Lang." However, he regarded me frigidly, earnestly. "It is the Lang of Lang Qian Kuan, not another." My smile congealed upon my visage. "How old are you?" 18. I was somewhat stupefied. Gazing at his stature and physiognomy, I must avow that the youth of today are truly well developed. As if he sensed my scrutiny, rendering him ill at ease, he straightened his posture and regarded me resolutely. "I am of age. Rather endearing. Do you desire to telephone your abode to apprise them of your safety?" I proffered him the telephone, yet he evinced no intention of accepting it. He merely stared at me. I retrieved my hand disconsolately and seized the medicine and water beside me. "You cannot recuperate without ingesting the medicine." He regarded me directly. "Sister, why did you rescue me?" I was dumbfounded and could only respond perfunctorily. "I was at leisure." He smiled. "Is it a diversion for the affluent? Do you know me?" He prodded the phone with his digit. "Herein there is everything." He pivoted to regard me with a vigilant mien. "Thus, why would the daughter of the Yen group rescue someone such as I?" I was rendered speechless by his query. I merely stared at his countenance, sighed for a spell, and hoisted the medicine anew. "Because I am fond of you." "You?" In his astonished expression, I expeditiously stuffed the pills into his maw and covered his mouth. "The medical expenses amount to 150,000. You are indebted to me. Thus you must ingest the medicine assiduously to regain your health and reimburse me. Do you apprehend?" I stared into his eyes until he transmuted from a state of panic to a gentle nod, and then I released my hold. He imbibed water, swallowed the pills and regarded me, as if he had something to conceal. He averted his gaze and regarded me, looking youthful and charming. It took him an extended period to finally utter something. I lacked the means. I was thunderstruck, never anticipating this utterance, and could not refrain from laughing. My parents have their own families now, and I lack a domicile at present. He blinked his large eyes, daring not to regard me, looking pitiful and distressing. I patted his hand gently and pivoted to depart, yet he summoned me. "Sister." I pivoted to regard him. I lacked the means. He hesitated and ultimately grasped the bedsheet with his hands, his visage flushed. "Promise me, can I?" 2. I am Yen Qi, the infamous daughter of the Yen family. The day I encountered Shen Lang, I had just bludgeoned someone into the hospital with a wine bottle. When I related this to Shen Lang, he merely smiled faintly and averred that Baidu had apprised him of all this. I was somewhat incensed, yet I still smiled and inquired of him, "Then, young lad, is there anything that your sister needs to disclose to you?" He blinked his eyes, looking guileless. "Sister, you merely need to inform me if you are amenable or not." I regarded his countenance and chuckled. "Naturally, I shall not suffer any detriment." Shen Lang was a recent high school graduate that year. On the day of the accident, he had just hastened to his parents' abode. He was poised to announce that he had been admitted to the university he had perpetually yearned for, yet both parties erroneously presumed that he was soliciting tuition fees. He was aggrieved and tumbled when he lost his composure. I procured a house adjacent to the university for him, so that I could conveniently behold him. "This is my secondary card. If you desire anything, proceed to purchase it yourself. This is a mobile phone. There is solely my number conserved therein." He accepted the phone and smiled and said, "I shall remember it and restitute it to you in the future. There is no necessity. Your liaison with me shall endure for a maximum of 4 years. Once you graduate, we shall sever our ties. Or if you have a maiden you are enamored of and do not wish to continue, I am amenable to it." I spoke nonchalantly, yet he seized me. When I pivoted, he regarded me with a highly aggrieved mien. "Sister, I am not engaging in this for your pecuniary resources." I chuckled and patted his visage. The sentence, they also averred that, was ultimately swallowed back into my stomach. Shen Lang is not my initial beauty ensconced in a golden abode, yet I merely observe from afar and never trifle with him. Thus, people bestow upon him the sobriquet sucker, yet when one cogitates upon it meticulously, he is not even my former paramour. They are not required to do anything, merely don a dark blue suit that I favor, unfasten the top 3 buttons of a white shirt, and address me as Yin Yin with a smile in their eyes. I am willing to satiate all their material cravings. However, Shen Lang is indeed disparate from them. His energy does not seem to be concentrated on how to ingratiate himself with me, but on his academic pursuits. Even the card I bestowed upon him has never been touched since the tuition fee was deducted. Why do you not don the suit and shirt I procured for you? I regarded the garments heaped in the closet in the bedroom, and even the labels remained intact. Shen Lang merely leaned against the doorjamb and said nonchalantly, I do not fancy it. Sister, address me as Yin Yin. I regarded him expectantly, presuming that he would comply with me on this occasion, yet there was merely a flicker of doubt in his eyes, and then he smiled anew. I do not relish this appellation. He advanced a step and extended his hand to clasp mine. I still prefer to address you as sister. I shook him off, yet he recaptured me. He held me tightly in his embrace and permitted me to struggle. Shen Lang was considerably taller than I. He gently stroked my pate with his hand to console me. Very well, sister, do not be wrathful. I shall don it. Exceedingly gentle, without inquiring the reason. In the initial 2 years, Shen Lang was highly attached to me, and at times he would express his affection like a brief essay. I was highly elated and even inquired of him daily. Do you cherish me? He responded to me indignantly. I solely cherish you. I was like a young maiden who had just commenced to fall in love. I was smitten with him for 2 years. Observing him purchase flowers for me, celebrate my birthday and travel with me, I immersed myself in his love. We engaged in all the activities that lovers ought to partake in, yet we did not kiss or engage in any other intimacies. He might have truly matured. At times when he tarried late, he would act coquettishly and adhere to me, refusing to permit me to depart. Remain with me, sister. He regarded me avidly. At the door, his colossal figure enfolded me and drew nearer and nearer. Do you cherish me? I regarded that countenance and inquired the question I had posed thousands of times. He was somewhat stupefied, yet still smiled and said, Sister, do you know who bestowed the jade guanine in my hand that day? My mother solicited it for me. She informed me since my infancy that as long as the jade guanine was present, I would always be felicitous. However, she did not desire me anymore. He smiled bitterly, yet his eyes regarding me were replete with stars. That was the day I ceased to place my faith in the divine. I solely placed my faith in you, sister. He embraced me, buried his pate in my neck and nuzzled twice, jesting in a muffled voice. Sister, you are like a heroine who preserves her chastity for someone in a television drama, he said and kissed my visage along my neck. When he was on the verge of reaching my lips, I repelled him and fled, panting. Until 10 minutes later, I materialized before him again. I regarded him indifferently. The doubt on his face had not yet dissipated, yet it melted into my impassioned kiss. He carried me into the bedroom, and the text message, I am getting married, in his pocket. He did not even have the opportunity to extinguish the light. We did not illuminate the room. In the dim chamber, I regarded Shen Lang before me, and he had long since shed the immaturity of 2 years prior. He clasped my visage, and the ambiguous breath that wafted towards my face rendered my thoughts even more muddled. I smiled at him with feigned composure. You lack experience? Forget it. What else is there to learn for something that is a natural proclivity, especially in the presence of your sister? He inquired of me in return, his eyes hazy. My visage flushed crimson, and I repelled him as customary, yet discovered that I could no longer do so. He unwittingly transmuted from a youth to a man. Sister. When I regarded him, his Adam's apple bobbed, and he said in a subdued voice, Are you terrified? I was stupefied for a moment, and then I recollected the text message I had just beheld. I resolved and tiptoed to kiss him. 3. Since that time, Shen Lang has been even more solicitous towards me. We seem to have forgotten that the genesis of everything was merely a transaction between him and me. I commenced to frequent the school to seek him and no longer contemplated others. However, Shen Lang had matured. He was no longer a young lad who dwelt alone with me, but a renowned prodigy in the medical school and a cold and haughty academic luminary in the eyes of others. When graduation was imminent, Shen Lang proceeded to the hospital for an internship, and I leaned against the door and observed him from afar. The setting sun bathed him, and he was attired in a white coat, and even the radiance he emitted was warm. At this time, several young nurses jostled and surrounded him, as if they would not desist until they added him on WeChat today. He knitted his brows, and his gold-rimmed spectacles could not conceal the indifference in his eyes. However, Shen Lang is Shen Lang. He is such an estimable individual that he never loses his temper. In the end, he merely smiled and waved his hand in a distant manner. When he pivoted his head to regard me, his eyes regained their luminosity, and he hastened over to clasp my hand. On the way back, Shen Lang was piloting the vehicle, and I surreptitiously regarded him. Handsome. Huh. Those young nurses. Are they your schoolmates? He chuckled and raised his eyebrows. Are you jealous, sister? I pivoted my head to the window and said sullenly, Why should I be jealous? It was originally stipulated. He ceased speaking, yet pursed his lips slightly, which was an indication that he was disgruntled. We did not utter a word until we concluded dinner that night. Shen Lang. I seized him who was on the verge of washing the dishes. I always adhere to my word. If you desire, you can do so at any time. After uttering this, I was actually somewhat flustered and melancholy. Shen Lang knitted his brows slightly, as if he cogitated for a while before he comprehended what I was saying. I did not regard him again, yet I heard him sigh softly, squat down and rest his pate on my lap. Sister, you are still wrathful, correct? He nudged my palm several times and his hair tickled me. They are of the same age as you. When you graduate, we should also. No, He regarded me suddenly, his eyes became somewhat fierce, yet he became flustered instantaneously. No, I do not desire anyone. I solely desire my sister. Do not utter such words again in the future. I was on the verge of opening my mouth, yet was restrained by his smiling visage. I nearly forgot, I procured a gift for you. After a while he extracted a sapphire blue gift box and placed it mysteriously on my lap. As the ribbon was untied, a black suspender dress materialized before me. The last time I beheld it, I deemed it highly suitable for you. I obtained the scholarship today, and thus I could scarcely wait to procure it. He retrieved it with a jubilant countenance, assisted me to my feet, and measured it. I am somewhat disgruntled today. Sister, would you don it for me to behold, merely to placate me? He smiled at me, looking aggrieved and ingratiating. I sighed, for I was at a loss regarding him. 10 minutes later I stood before the mirror. Shen Lang had an exceedingly discerning eye, and the skirt was highly becoming on me. He slowly advanced behind me, encircled my waist with his arms, and enfolded me with a warm exhalation. Is it comely? I felt considerably better and inquired of him with a smile. He pivoted me to face him, regarding me reluctantly. It is exceedingly comely. How comely is it? I jested on the verge of pivoting, yet was clasped tightly by him once more. It is so comely that I am rendered incapable of self-restraint. I evaded before he drew near me, yet he regarded me aggrievedly. Sister, are you prevaricating? I had a queering expression. He smiled. Did you not aver that you invariably adhere to your word and are prepared at any moment? I was stupefied for a while and then reacted, yet it was overly tardy. Shen Lang, it seems, is not as compliant as I had surmised. 4. The ensuing day was the weekend, and Shen Lang insisted that I accompany him on a shopping excursion. It is the change of season, and it is time to acquire some habiliments. I held the garments and compared them to him without regarding him. Sister. He summoned me softly, and I glanced up and beheld his aggrieved visage, his eyes replete with reluctance. Could you refrain from donning a suit? I do not fancy dark blue. He regarded me attentively. However, my heart was assailed by his words. For a moment, I was uncertain whether to replace the suit or continue to thrust it into his embrace. Shen Lang seemed to detect that something was amiss with me and promptly smiled and retrieved the suit obediently. It is of no consequence, sister. I actually appear rather handsome in this, correct? I merely opine that I possess a trifle too many styles of this. My apologies, sir. The shopping guide approached our side softly, indicating the garments in Shen Lang's hand with an embarrassed mien. This is the last one, and it has already been reserved. Reserved? Shen Lang retorted. Then, there is naught to be done, Shen Lang said, and then he clasped my hand and walked out. Yet at this juncture, a dark blue figure at the entrance obstructed the sole passage. Oh, Mr. Fu, you are here. The shopping guide greeted me with the suit. Shen Lang and I also sensed the gaze of the person opposite, staring at the hand I held with him. I could distinctly hear my heartbeat and Shen Lang's faint respiration after I withdrew my hand. Fu Jishu had a frigid countenance and a nonchalant voice, yet it carried a magnetic and deterrent force. Yen Yen, come hither. 5. I am Yen Qi, the fiancé forsaken by Fu Jishu. As the daughter of the Yen family, I have been reared in the Fu family since my infancy. Fu Jishu is 5 years my senior. Such a taciturn individual would peruse Andersen's fairy tales throughout the night to lull me to slumber. Everyone averred to me, Yen Qi, Fu Jishu is your future consort. Even Fu Jishu would kneel on one knee at my graduation gala, kiss my hand, and inquire if I was amenable to marry him. And all of this, in my eyes, was the embellishment upon the cake of my ardent infatuation with him. Until a few years ago, when the Fu family endeavored to expand overseas markets and elevate the entire family business to a loftier echelon, Fu Jishu's departure without bidding farewell rendered me a laughingstock. Subsequently, I learned that the daughter of the partner had fallen in love with Fu Jishu at first sight, and then I received an unsigned text message. The laconic 5 words, I am getting married, emanated from Fu Jishu's candor, and he severed all ties with me. At this time, he stood before me and addressed me as customary. Yen Yen, come hither. I regarded him, my feet still unconsciously advancing towards him, yet was seized by a force. When I regained my senses and glanced up, I recollected Shen Lang standing beside me. At this time, he regarded Fu Jishu before him with an extremely shocked and incredulous mien. Virtually identical eyebrows, facial contour, height, and even the habiliments they donned were astonishingly alike. I opened my mouth to elucidate, yet I was at a loss for words in his aggrieved eyes. A faint and frigid smile materialized on his lips, and he slowly relinquished my hand. His lips quivered, yet his eyes commenced to redden. Even so, he still forced a smile and obediently said to me, Sister, you two converse first. I shall repair elsewhere. As he said this, he bolted out of the entrance. I was on the verge of pursuing him, yet desisted at Fu Jishu's slightly furrowed brows. He seemed desirous of extending his hand, yet halted there and returned it to his pocket. He merely said softly, Long time no see. I remained mute, merely regarding him indifferently until he averted his gaze, and then I walked away from him. He sighed softly and trailed me, just as silently as when I was wrathful in my childhood. He accompanied me through several streets. However, when we reached the underground parking lot, he was not as patient this time. He hastened his pace and even sprinted directly towards me. Yen Yen, why did you return? Why did you seek me? I wept, my visage drenched with tears. Fu Jishu merely maintained his silence and then quietly assisted me in wiping my face. I shall convey you to America, he said quietly without posing any queries. I was stupefied and then laughed, as if I had heard a dreadful jest. Fu Jishu, are you demented? Why would you convey me? To be your benevolent sister and witness you display your affection, or do you desire me to be your? I am divorced. Fu Zhishu lowered his head and said softly, yet I was thunderstruck. She and I were merely a transaction. Now that the Fu family has established itself, Yin Yen, I have accomplished what was requisite. I have returned to retrieve you. She and I were merely a business marriage. We each obtained what we coveted. You are cognizant of this. I quietly shook off his hand and said indifferently, naturally I comprehend, just as I and Mr. Fu in the past. However, at present, there is naught I require from Mr. Fu. I pivoted and departed resolutely. This time he did not pursue me again, yet inquired angrily behind me. For whom? The young lad just now? I bit my lip, inhaled deeply, and pivoted to regard him. Shen Lang. His name is Shun Lang. 6. When I arrived home it was already 10 o'clock. The moment I illuminated the light, Shun Lang, who was huddled on the sofa, startled me. I patted my bosom and surmised that he was asleep, yet he spoke. I presumed that you would not return. I was somewhat abashed. It was patently a transactional relationship, yet this time rendered me more apprehensive than the previous occasions. I sighed, walked past him to the bedchamber, and commenced packing my belongings. As customary, I placed a card on the bedside, cogitated for a while, and retrieved a business card from my satchel and placed it atop. When I pivoted, I was alarmed by Shun Lang leaning against the door. He seemed to have wept, his eyes were inflamed, and he regarded me with horror. What are you engaging in? There is 1 million in the card, which is my recompense to you. If it is insufficient, you possess my telephone number. I lowered my head and indicated the business card anew. That is the contact information of your favored medical doctor. I have apprised him. He merely stared at me vacantly, without responding or speaking. I inhaled deeply, hauled the box, and was on the verge of passing by him. Just as I was about to depart from the bedchamber entrance, he seized me. The erstwhile gentleness transmuted into strength between my wrists. He pressed me down with force, yet I evaded him. He was stupefied, and his suppressed respiration sounded so agonizing. You never spurned me previously. His voice was replete with grievance and hoarseness. I invariably thought that as long as I heeded you obediently, you would invariably cherish me. He pinched my visage with his hands, and he was entirely disparate from the customary well-behaved and sensible Shun Lang. He compressed his lips tightly, and a bestial glimmer flashed across his eyes. Sister, it transpires that the one who is disobedient is you. I felt a sense of melancholy in my heart, and tears streamed unconsciously. His eyes flickered faintly and then darkened instantaneously, supplanted by panic. You. He touched my visage with his hands in a panic. Do not weep, sister, I am contrite. Do not weep. However, I wept with increasing vehemence in his consoling voice. He regarded me distressedly and ultimately inhaled deeply, buried his pate in my neck and soliloquized. So sister, do you cherish me or this countenance of mine? 7. That night, I related a great deal of my past with Fu Zhishu to Shun Lang, and he merely inclined his head on my shoulder and listened to the entire narrative tranquilly. He did not inquire of me whom I cherished, or even whether I would depart. He merely abruptly reverted to his customary sweet, gentle and sensible self. Sister, even if I am a surrogate, Shun Lang, I hastened to elucidate. Sister, heed me. He interrupted me and continued, merely conceive of me as a surrogate. Since you are solicitous about him to such an extent, could you bestow a modicum of heartache or sympathy upon me, accompany me once more. He regarded me with inflamed eyes, looking at me with the same expression of a wounded little beast that I beheld when I first espied him. My heart softened, and I was disinclined to utter anything. I merely embraced him and placated him for an extended period and remained in the abode with him for numerous days. Unexpectedly, Fu Zhishu presented himself at my threshold. After receiving his call, I pivoted and collided with Shun Lang's eyes. There was a momentary glimmer of frigidity, yet it was so ephemeral that I deemed it an illusion. A call from Mr. Fu. I nodded. He averred that he desired to confer with me regarding something. I cogitated and added, it ought to be a business matter. Our two families have certain dealings. I endeavored to elucidate it as lucidly as possible, yet Shun Lang smiled and caressed my pate. Sister, there is no necessity to expound. He pivoted and commenced donning his habiliments, shoes, and retrieved the shopping bags. Let us invite Mr. Fu to dine at our abode tonight. I shall proceed to purchase some victuals and permit him to sample my culinary prowess. There is no necessity. Bang! Shun Lang did not afford me any opportunity to respond. My voice was truncated on this side of the door. I regarded the telephone in my hand that had not yet been terminated and tentatively said, Fu Zhishu, see you tonight. At this time I was left speechless in the chamber, and there was an irate beep sound after hanging up the phone. 8. When the doorbell chimed, Shun Lang was humming a ditty and slicing vegetables in the kitchen, in an exceedingly sanguine mood. The moment I opened the door, I was confronted with Fu Zhishu's gnashing teeth. He was drenched and in a highly wretched state. I was stupefied and subconsciously regarded the starry sky outside. Is it raining? However, he walked past me and proceeded directly into the room, colliding with the towel proffered to him by Shun Lang. Fu Zhishu raised his eyes to regard him, then chuckled, tossed the towel over and wiped his pate. It is not raining. When he said this, he was still staring at Shun Lang with a smile on his face. The elevator is undergoing maintenance, and I am ignorant of which ill-bred ruffian placed a basin of water on the staircase entrance as a prank. TSK, the elevator malfunctioned and you did not telephone me? I said and proceeded to seek my mobile phone, yet it was handed to me by Shun Lang. Just now I beheld that my sister's phone was depleted of power, and thus I merely charged it. I accepted it and there were indeed over 10 missed calls. Then I regarded Fujishu. Although I felt relieved that such a thing had befallen him, I still felt somewhat embarrassed. Proceed inside and bathe. Do not contract an illness here, for I shall be unable to account for it later. I indicated within, yet Shun Lang seized my hand. Sister, you retire and rest. I shall attend to the guest. As he said this, he led Fujishu to the bathroom with a smile on his face. Mr. Fu, the gray one on the wall is mine, and the pink one on the right is my sister's. The one on the toilet is for you. Have no concerns, I wiped it meticulously. Hasten, it is time to dine. Before Fujishu could react, he clicked the bathroom door. I dared not utter a word and merely quietly sensed the Shuri-esque atmosphere between them. In less than 10 minutes, Fujishu emerged, glared at Shun Lang ferociously, and I slipped into the bathroom to tidy up. As soon as I entered, I beheld the gray towel on the toilet. The repast was highly oppressive. The tofu is overly piquant. Fujishu lowered his voice and deliberately found fault. Sister favors spicy victuals. Shun Lang smiled and deposited the tofu into my bowl. The rice is overly firm. Sister favors firm victuals. The fish is overly fishy. Then you partake of it and refrain from bestowing it upon sister. That was the most interminable repast I have ever partaken in my life, until Fujishu was so incensed that he slammed the chopsticks upon the table. Yet they were promptly seized by Shun Lang, including the bowl of rice before him that had remained untouched. I have not yet finished dining. He was wrathful until I signaled Shun Lang to bring forth another bowl of rice. Fujishu rolled his eyes and took a prodigious mouthful of rice. In an instant, his eyes reddened and the entire mouthful of rice was spewed out. I beheld in astonishment as he coughed frantically. Fujishu, what ails you? I regarded him helplessly, covering his pate. The water I proffered him failed to alleviate his affliction. He merely gasped for breath. Shun Lang guffawed beside him. Now Mr. Fu is sated, correct? I regarded Fujishu, who was in discomfort upon the ground. This familiar visage, I swiftly regarded his bowl. And verily, there was a substantial lump of mustard. Nonsense! I bellowed, and Shun Lang's smile congealed upon his countenance for a moment. Shun Lang, how could you be so puerile? He is allergic to mustard. In the event of any peril I withheld the acrimonious words that ensued, and Shun Lang regarded me in disbelief. I paid him no heed and immediately supported Fujishu and retrieved the car keys. Mister, I shall accompany you. There is no necessity. I slammed the door shut and drove Fujishu to the hospital. Fortunately, he had not consumed much, and he felt considerably better after the injection in a mere half an hour. Ingest this first, for it shall assist with your asthma. I meticulously ordered the medications, and this it is somewhat bitter. I shall venture outside and procure you a sweetmeat later. As I was speaking, Fujishu abruptly clasped my hand. Looking up, his eyes were inflamed. I am uncertain if it was due to the mustard or some other cause. I am contrite. I had been awaiting his utterance of this for numerous years, yet when I truly heard it, I was momentarily at a loss for words. It is the onus of the sole heir of the Fu family to promote the prosperity of the Fu family. His voice was considerably softer. However, as Fujishu Yin, you are my destination. Tisa, Fu Zitsu. Yin, permit me to atone for my transgressions. 5 years are of no import. We still possess copious time remaining in our lives. I shall demonstrate it to you. He grew increasingly animated as he spoke and then commenced panting anew. I hastened outside to seek a physician. I was ensnared by Fujishu and tarried with him in the hospital for a week. It was not until the doctor inquired if he intended to reside in the ward for his twilight years that he sullenly underwent the discharge procedures. Fujishu was oblivious to the number of circuitous routes he had taken. The original 10-minute journey took from 10 in the morning until 8 in the evening before he arrived home. I shook my head sighed, and was on the verge of opening the door when I heard a click. Fujishu locked the car door. I pivoted in astonishment. Fujishu. He regarded the window tranquilly, with no intention of permitting me to depart. Yin, accompany me. He pivoted his head and regarded me. Shun Lang is ill-suited for you. Fujishu, what is your rationale? Fujishu unfastened his seatbelt, opened the door, and proceeded directly to the passenger seat. I was on the verge of rising, yet he pressed me forcefully into the seat. He regarded me from above. Because you Yen-Chi still cherish me. Is this reason sufficient? Are you poised to inquire of me what evidence I possess? He chuckled and regarded me from above. Yin, is there any more cogent reason than Shun Lang's countenance? What of Mr. Fu's principles? This is not characteristic of you. I stared at him and bit my lip. He stared at me vacantly, with a vulnerability I had never before beheld upon his visage. Not characteristic of me? Yin, do you truly know me so well? Are you aware that when I espied so many fairy tales in your bedchamber and a glimmer of hope surged within my heart, it was Shun Lang who came to apprise me that you no longer required fairy tales, for you already had him. Jealous, Yin, I was jealous. That is why I hastily divorced and hastened back to China. Principles. Even if I, Fujishu, possess 1,000 principles, what of it? Yin, although I cannot bestow upon you the same ardent love as Shun Lang, you are the sole reason for me to betray my principles. Is that not adequate? I regarded him. Were it in the past, I fear that at this moment, I would have already been moved and flung myself into his embrace. However, today, I merely slowly straightened myself and stood before him. So, Fujishu, if you were afforded another opportunity to select, would you choose your family or your responsibility? Fujishu was stupefied and mute for a moment. However, I smiled at him. Behold, Fujishu, the disparity between you and me has never been a matter of timing. It is not your fault. You merely chose what you ought to have chosen. And I too chose what I ought to have chosen. I regarded the man I had cherished for many years, and my voice cleaved through that night and also severed the fleeting years between him and me. Fare thee well, Fujishu. 10. After numerous days, I returned to the cabin with Shun Lang. I presumed that he had departed after that night, yet I discovered him huddled upon the bed on the sofa. As the lights were illuminated, he blocked the light with his hands, and when he beheld that it was I, he staggered over and embraced me. Have you been here awaiting my return? I regarded the chaos behind me in disbelief. I was apprehensive that you would not discover me when you returned, and thus I awaited you here. He pivoted and indicated the sofa. I was fearful that you would return, yet I did not hear you. I dared not slumber and thus remained here upon the sofa, facing the door. I embraced him compassionately. Now he had forfeited all his former splendor, just like a pup who deemed himself abandoned. Shun Lang, I have something to disclose to you. His eyes abruptly darkened, and he slowly relinquished me, his eyelashes quivering as he retreated several paces. Shun Lang, await me, sister. He smiled at me and pivoted to walk into the bedroom. After a while, he groomed himself and restored his pallid countenance, yet he was attired in the original dark blue suit and white shirt, habitually unfastening 3 buttons. You. I frowned at him. However, he forced a smile and regarded me. Sister, regard me now. Am I more akin to him? I hastened over to embrace him, and simultaneously, the tears he had been suppressing finally cascaded. I did not intend it. I was unaware that he was allergic. I was merely enraged. He apprised me of your engagement and informed me that he would assuredly abduct you. I cannot abide it, sister. I cannot permit anyone to abduct you. Yet, sister, why did I not encounter you earlier? He regarded me dolorously, with a wounded visage. Why do you not cherish me? Why do those I cherish not cherish me in return? Mother and father are thus, and now even you are thus. Why can I not retain you? At this moment I regarded him, and I did not desire him to endure the slightest grievance, and thus I stood on tiptoe and kissed him gently. He was stupefied for a moment regarding me. I regarded him with a smile. Silly lad, I wish to inquire of you. It has been 4 years. Do you desire to consider becoming a permanent fixture? He stared at me. The light in his eyes was gradually rekindled, yet he still inquired uncertainly. Sister, who am I? I touched his eyes and kindled the fire within. Shun Lang. From the commencement to the terminus, you are my Shun Lang. Extra. Shun Ayan's perspective. Mother. Mother is not present. Shin Aki was meddling with her trifles once more. As a sister, she utterly disregarded the well-being of my brother. What of father? Why are you seeking him? Inquire of him where mother is. Shin Ayan regarded me speechlessly. Are you famished? Did not Uncle Fu just escort us to dine? She sighed profoundly, moved a stool and hastened to the kitchen. 10 minutes later, a piece of blackened charcoal was placed before me. What is this? Scrambled eggs. I regarded her and then the piece of blackened charcoal. Summon it once and ascertain if it responds. Shin Ayan disclosed the truth to me. You merely desire to slay me and usurp our parents' fortune single-handedly, correct? Shin Ayan rolled her eyes at me and flung a bucket of instant noodles at me. How could a 7-year-old child such as you harbor such malevolent thoughts? I hastened over and snatched the pile of rags from her. Are these male celebrities something an 8-year-old child ought to be preoccupied with? I clutched one of the photographs. Oh my heavens! You even contemplate Uncle Fu. She kicked me aside, snatched the pile of rags, and clutched it to her bosom like a precious treasure. What do you apprehend? Uncle Fu is so handsome. These are all my brethren, and you are not permitted to speak thusly of them. I reclined upon the ground, sighing with despair. Shin Ayan, hearken to our names, Shin Ayan and Shin Aki. I have heard that they were selected by father. He can monopolize mother for 8 days out of 7 in a week. He left us in the care of Uncle Fu. You did not inherit the culinary or medical skills, but you inherited father's love-struck mind. Oh, I can assure you now that I could traverse from mother's room to my own by myself when I was a year old. This must be a falsehood from father. Shin Ayan rolled her eyes at me. Father is an academician. How could he deceive you? However, it is true. I yearn for mother as well. Thus, what do you opine we ought to do? I abruptly sat up. I heard from Uncle Fu that when we were born, mother was at home every day, and father prepared delicious victuals every day. Why do we not? We impregnate mother? How? Shin Ayan became animated all of a sudden. I knitted my brows and retrieved a needle from my bosom. Needle. After Shin Ayan and I perpetrated something momentous that day, less than 2 months later, my mother was confined to the house. Father prepared numerous delicious dishes to serve my mother, and Shin Ayan and I were the ones who reaped the most benefits. Is it delectable, sister? Delectable. Let us repeat it anon. Let us repeat it anon.